Una inversión inteligente en agua, saneamiento e higiene ayuda a cambiar vidas, ayuda a salvar vidas y ayuda a economías a recuperarse y prosperar. La Alianza Saneamiento y Agua para Todos, junto con UNICEF, el Banco Mundial y el Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo, le dan la bienvenida a esta importante reunión global. Gracias por estar con nosotros. En todo el mundo, la inversión marca la diferencia. En Vietnam, el turismo se benefició.
Thành phố Nha Trang là một trong thành phố trọng đầu những năm 2000 đứng trước cái cơ hội thuận lợi mới để phát triển ngành du lịch của tỉnh Khánh Hòa. Thì lãnh đạo tỉnh đã chấp thuận cái dự án đầu tư về cái cải thiện vệ sinh môi trường thành phố Nha Trang cái giai đoạn 2007-2014. Trong đó đặc biệt năm 2019 vừa qua thì Khánh Hòa đã đón 6,2 triệu lượt khách du lịch, trong đó trên 3,6 triệu lượt khách quốc tế và doanh thu của ngành du lịch đã đạt 27.200 tỷ đồng.
En Nigeria, las iniciativas de agua, saneamiento y higiene continúan teniendo un impacto positivo en la educación.
So, since the intervention of WASH, the population of the school has been increased from 152 to 245. The academic have been improved. Because some of them used to run home before, but now there was no diseases. They stay in their classes.
En Brasil, la inversión económica beneficiaría a la sociedad.
Quando a gente olha para o Brasil, a gente percebe que aproximadamente 100 milhões de pessoas não têm acesso ao esgoto tratado. Quando a gente olha para pessoas sem água, nós olhamos para uma população equivalente a 35 milhões de pessoas no Brasil. Se a gente imagina, criasse uma situação hipotética de Brasil saneado, uma meta a ser perseguida, aonde remontam investimentos da ordem de 450 bilhões, retornariam à sociedade algo superior a 1 trilhão de reais.
En la India, los proyectos de agua potable cambian vidas.
Earlier, collecting water was a big headache for all women. We couldn't take any job because we were waiting to collect water, which could be delivered at any time. Because of this, the school attendance of children was also affected. After this project was approved, the overall economic status has improved. Now we are able to send our children to school all the time.
Las alianzas regionales y mundiales son fundamentales.
The African Development Bank invests in water supply, sanitation and hygiene due to their centrality to poverty reduction, the achievement of socio-economic development objectives for Africa, as well as achievement of the SDGs.
I urge finance ministers and heads of state to take water as a priority topic and take it to the top of their policy agendas. Only in this way would we prevent a complete negative impact on the health of populations and the economic development of nations.
Investments in basic water and sanitation services in developing countries have been shown to have benefit to cost ratios as high as 7-to-1, according to the OECD, because of their positive impacts on health, education and nutrition. The benefit to cost ratio can be raised even higher if wastewater is treated as a resource and recycled.
Hoy tienes la oportunidad de marcar la diferencia. Invertir en agua, saneamiento e higiene nunca ha sido más importante. Juntos podemos reducir la desnutrición, liberar a mujeres y niñas, impulsar las economías, aumentar la existencia escolar, mitigar el cambio climático y mejorar la atención médica en todo el mundo. Sé parte de la conversación. Sé parte de la solución.
It is a great honor to welcome all of you to the second meeting of the series of 3 regional virtual meetings between finance ministers of the Sanitation and Water for All Alliance. It's unfortunate that we're not able to meet personally due to the pandemic that has made our lives so complicated. But we're pleased that this situation provided us with the opportunity of holding an online version so more people can join and engage in this conversation. And we have more ministers of finance today. These meetings are sponsored by the SWA and some of the Alliance's main partners, UNICEF and the World Bank globally, and regionally wise, this meeting is also co-sponsored by the Inter-American Development Bank, and we will hear their representatives speaking today. Before we get started, allow me to provide you with some housekeeping information. This meeting will be held in Spanish, French, English, and Portuguese with simultaneous interpretation into the 4 languages, and I apologize for the translation complications when we started this meeting because we had many languages at the same time. So those of you who will speak throughout the meeting, you already received information about the adjustments corresponding to your own languages. So you would already have chosen your languages when you joined us, and we will also have subtitles in English, Spanish, and French on the bottom of your screen. If you're experiencing any issues, please send a message using the chat. We have only 120 minutes for this meeting, and we do want to have and to encourage a lively exchange of ideas. So we want to invite you to engage briefly and to be as significant as you can in your participations so we provide more people with a chance of speaking. Of course, we will prioritize the ministers of finance because this is their meeting. Once having provided housekeeping notices, I want to welcome the honorable ministers of finance, the honorable ministers of the sector, and our distinguished panelists. There are 17 confirmed ministers as well as representatives of different countries, and most particularly representatives of Latin America and the Caribbean. It is an honor for us to have you here today with us.
This meeting is both an opportunity for Finance Minister to discuss the fundamental role of water, sanitation and hygiene for the health and economic and social development. The major challenges we have faced in recent months have led to placing water, supply, sanitation and hygiene at the heart of our discussions. And in particular, the need to make these services available, accessible, affordable, and sustainable for all. We welcome everyone who is attending at the SWA event for the first time.
We have come a long way. As we can see in the participation in this meeting and the very intensive preparatory missions, the ministers of finance and their teams are committed with the water and sanitation sector. We believe that they can help us open some of the restrictions and lift some of the restrictions and difficulties that we know with regards to increased funding for the sector, reinforce tariffs and subsidies to support a better performance, a more efficient performance of the sector, and give access to the Green Fund for the environment.
Guys, know that our words can be translated into fact. Governments, civil society organizations, donors, and the private sector have submitted around 300 commitments to the SWA Mutual Responsibility Commitment. And we have invited ministers of finance to join with their sectorial ministers to reach the national commitments. As part of our alliances framework, which is constantly growing, we want to establish a platform that will allow us to meet so we can continue learning and engaging in a dialogue in this platform. So we will now invite our opening guests, and we will give the floor to our moderator, who will present the main national practices of Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and Guatemala, which we will pay close attention to. We are fortunate that we have such high-level guests for the opening remarks of this meeting. Thank you very much.
I will now introduce the speakers making the opening remarks and then hand over to our moderator, as I said. Ms. Henrietta Fore is the Executive Director of UNICEF. And as many of you might know, SWA has the honor and the pleasure to be hosted by UNICEF. Ms. Fore has worked to champion economic development, education, health, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, in the public service, private sector, and non-profit leadership career that spans more than several decades, and including serving as the administrator of USAID. Executive Director Fore, it's my pleasure to hand over the floor to you now.
Thank you very much, Katarina. And UNICEF is enormously proud to be standing with the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank at today's meeting. And thank you all for joining us. Water and sanitation are human rights. Yet on the 10th anniversary of the recognition of the right to water and sanitation, we are facing some very stark challenges. This meeting brings us together at a very unique moment in history. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed weaknesses and inequalities in our current water, sanitation, and hygiene systems in a very dramatic way, and the inequalities are growing. As we face a recession as a result of this pandemic, governments will need to really look at the enormous fiscal pressure that they are under. You may not be able to fund social programs to the extent needed, and this represents a huge threat to social stability. As a global community looking ahead to lasting and hopefully sustainable and peaceful recovery, we are at a crossroads. But while the challenges are great, so are the opportunities. It is now on us collectively to reimagine the post-COVID world and to shape it in a new, more equal way. As we recover from this crisis, WASH can be an equalizer, helping to ensure the recovery benefits all people and not just the lucky few. That is why it is an honor to be with this group of very distinguished ministers and partner agencies who have come together to discuss the urgency and the importance of increased funding for WASH within and beyond the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'd like to remind us of several urgent challenges as we stand here today. First, water scarcity threatens more and more countries each year, calling on us to develop solutions that make every drop count. Second, millions of people across the region lack access to safe sanitation. Sanitation is a public good and requires public funds to ensure equity and safe management of waste. Third, while the importance of hand hygiene for disease prevention has received greater attention than ever before, we must now sustain those gains beyond the COVID-19 pandemic. And lastly, WASH in institutions such as schools and healthcare facilities has become one of the issues of our time. Without WASH, schools cannot safely reopen, and health facilities cannot prevent the spread of infections to healthcare workers and to patients. The costs of providing basic WASH services in healthcare facilities is only a fraction of what could be saved from the human and economic costs resulting from poor WASH. Our teams throughout Latin America and the Caribbean and around the world are here to support you. And we will work in partnership with the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank and the many partner organizations that are on today to support governments with and finance national plans. Let us work together to make this vision a reality for every country, for every community, for every family and for every child. Thank you. Katerina, over to you.
Thank you so much, Edie, for your support, for being here, and for the work that UNICEF is doing on water, sanitation, and hygiene. It's my great pleasure to hand over now the floor to Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, who has been the WHO Director General since 2017, and prior to this served as Ethiopia's Minister for Foreign Affairs between 2012 and 2016, and as Ethiopia's Minister of Health from 2005 to 2012. In 2016, Dr. Tedros welcomed SWA to a sector ministers meeting that was held in Addis Ababa. All roads lead to universal health coverage for Dr. Tedros, a sentiment that we at SWA can fully agree with. Dr. Tedros, over to you. Dr. Tedros, you are still muted.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Perfectly
Thank you
well.
so much, Catarina. Thank you, Madam President. Queridos ministros, buenas tardes desde Ginebra. Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends.
From Geneva.
It's an honor to join you today. These discussions between health, water, and finance ministers are among the most important meetings of the year. Investing in water, sanitation, and hygiene is critical both to preventing and recovering from pandemics and local outbreaks. Its absence leaves us exposed. In fact, one of our most fundamental public health measures falls short in Latin America and the Caribbean and around the world because hundreds of millions of people cannot wash their hands. That includes health workers in one out of 3 healthcare facilities globally. You already know the basics. Water, sanitation, and hygiene is the first line of defense against COVID-19 and so many other diseases such as diarrhea, cholera, typhoid, malnutrition, influenza, and pneumonia. It's also critical to preventing the spread of antimicrobial resistance, which is one of our biggest global threats. Without water, sanitation, and hygiene, we're vulnerable. This fundamental science has been known for decades. Nonetheless, inequalities in coverage of water, sanitation, and hygiene have persisted. It is a fundamental tenet of public health. When some populations are unprotected, we're all at risk. Underinvestment in water, sanitation, and hygiene has left 166 million people in Latin America and the Caribbean without safe drinking water, and 443 million without safe sanitation. Only 12 countries in the region have national data on hand washing. But in those countries, 65 million people do not have the means to wash their hands at home. Globally, we're alarmingly off track to deliver on our commitments to Sustainable Development Goal 6 for water and sanitation. To achieve the 2030 goals, the rate of progress for sanitation needs to quadruple. Tomorrow, WHO and UNICEF will launch the State of Sanitation report, which sets out a path for investment in governance, financing, capacity development, data, and innovation. Investments in water, sanitation, and hygiene are what we call a no-regrets investment. Pay a rich dividend in health, human rights, and inclusive economic growth. The economic benefits of investing in sanitation are about 5 times the cost, and improving hand hygiene can generate savings in health expenditure up to 15 times the cost. In other words, investing in water, sanitation, and hygiene is not just a health imperative. It is an economic imperative. The COVID-19 pandemic is reminding us that health and economics are deeply intertwined, and that investments in health, including water, sanitation, and hygiene, are the necessary foundation for productive, resilient, and stable economies. But these links are not well understood. Too often, health spending is seen as a cost, not an investment. To address this gap, I announced last week that WHO will establish a new council on the economics of health for all, to focus on the links between health and sustainable, inclusive, and innovation-led economic growth. The council will be chaired by the distinguished economist, Professor Mariana Mazzucato. Excellencies, colleagues and friends, COVID-19 pandemic is the greatest crisis of our time, but it's also the greatest opportunity of our time, an opportunity to rethink the future. Investments in water, sanitation, and hygiene are central policy prescriptions in WHO's Manifesto for a Healthy and Green Recovery from COVID-19. With sustainable public investment, responsible management, and accountability, we can make safe water, sanitation, and hygiene a reality for everybody in Latin America and the Caribbean and around the world. Muchas gracias. Merci beaucoup. Obrigado. I thank you. Obrigado, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tedros. We fully agree with you. We cannot have health for all without sanitation and water and hygiene for all. So let me hence take the liberty of proposing that the council that you have just established also includes representation from the water and sanitation sector, in particular from SWA. I think it would be great to bring the two together.
To the next speaker, Mr. Mauricio Carone, that is the chairman of the Interdevelopment Bank. We received the message that Mr. Carone was summoned to another meeting and he cannot be with us. However, he shared a video that we're going to share with you at this point.
Es un honor participar en este diálogo sobre un sector tan estratégico como el del agua y saneamiento. Agradezco la participación de los ministros de Finanzas, nuestros gobernadores y del sector que nos acompañan, así como las otras instituciones de desarrollo, empresas prestadoras y profesionales del sector. Un agradecimiento especial a Sanitation and Water for All por esta invitación. Como todos ustedes saben, en América Latina y el Caribe vivimos la paradoja de ser la región donde coexiste la abundancia de agua con la escasez. América Latina y el Caribe cuenta con el 30% de todo el agua dulce del planeta y apenas el 10% de la población global. Aún así, millones de nuestros ciudadanos carecen del acceso a los servicios de agua potable y saneamiento. Empecemos por las ciudades. Somos la región más urbanizada del planeta, pero en la actualidad, alrededor de 1/3 de los habitantes de las ciudades de la región carecen de un servicio continuo de agua potable. La situación es mucho más precaria en cuanto al servicio de saneamiento, ya que el 70% de los hogares, es decir, 450 millones de personas, no tienen acceso a una gestión adecuada de excretas, lo cual tiene un impacto negativo en la salud de las personas y el medio ambiente. Y el problema es mucho más grave en el sector rural, que tiene los mismos déficits de cobertura que tenía el sector urbano hace 25 años atrás. Ya sea en las ciudades o en el campo, los hogares de menor ingreso se ven doblemente afectados, ya que tienen que gastar mucho más dinero y esfuerzo para conseguir agua de fuentes alternativas, como los pozos, camiones de cisterna o agua embotellada. Para cerrar estas brechas, está claro que tenemos que invertir mucho más. Por ejemplo, según nuestras previsiones, si se sigue la tendencia actual, América Latina y el Caribe necesitaría 100 años más para alcanzar la cobertura universal de saneamiento. Esto no es aceptable. Además de la falta de inversión, hoy enfrentamos otros desafíos que complican la agenda de este sector. Los efectos del cambio climático están amenazando ecosistemas que nos proveen de agua y dañando la infraestructura física de almacenamiento y distribución. El COVID-19 nos ha recordado que ninguna estrategia de salud pública funciona sin acceso confiable a agua potable. Todo el mundo sabe que el primer paso para prevenir la propagación del virus es lavarse las manos con agua y jabón, y casi todos los países han decretado que los servicios de agua y saneamiento son esenciales y exentos de la cuarentena. Pero la dura realidad es que muchos proveedores de servicios han tenido dificultad en garantizar la continuidad del servicio durante la pandemia. En este difícil contexto, el BID está concentrando su apoyo en dos ejes. En el corto plazo, nuestra prioridad es apoyar a las empresas proveedoras de servicios para que puedan seguir operando durante la pandemia, facilitando recursos financieros para que paguen a su personal y hagan mantenimiento esencial. También estaremos apoyando a los operadores para que aprovechen la crisis para dar saltos en la innovación tecnológica, la digitalización de servicios y las reformas de la gobernanza que los lleven a mejorar el desempeño y la eficiencia. El BID ha sido un líder en la inversión en agua y saneamiento desde hace más de 60 años. De hecho, el primer proyecto del banco fue una planta potabilizadora en Arequipa, Perú, que aún se encuentra en funcionamiento. Hoy nuestra cartera ha crecido exponencialmente y estamos presentes en el sector con proyectos emblemáticos en todos los países de la región. Por mencionar algunos, desde hace 40 años estamos apoyando el saneamiento ambiental de ciudades como Medellín, Montevideo y Sao Paulo. En el caso de Medellín, 99% de las aguas residuales del área metropolitana hoy son tratadas antes de ser vertidas al río. Esto ha permitido la recuperación integral de la zona ribereña del centro de la ciudad, que hoy es conocida por sus parques y áreas de recreación pública. Les aseguro que seguiremos siendo sus socios en miras de alcanzar la cobertura universal y sostenible de los servicios de agua y de saneamiento. De nuevo, gracias por la invitación a participar en este encuentro.
So right now, I would like to go to the next speaker. The next speaker is the former Prime Minister of Australia, Kevin Wright. He has been and continues being the high-level chairman of our alliance since 2015. He's passionate about finances. Since he assumed his position, he has turned into a passionate defender of sanitation. We're going to show you and give you his discourse presentation where he's giving us the world, he's giving the economic and social matters in favor of investment in healing and hygiene and what the Ministers of Finance role.
Kevin Rudd. I'm the Global Chair of Sanitation and Water for All. Thank you to UNICEF, the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank for co-hosting our meeting today. We've heard already about the importance of water, sanitation and hygiene in the face of COVID-19. So today I want to focus my remarks on the broader political context and speak to you directly as ministers. I've been in politics for a long time myself, and I know something of the political constraints you all face at this time. It's not easy. But I also understand the importance of seizing political opportunities that come before you, especially in a sector as far-reaching as this one. And I'm sure we will all agree the biggest problem globally in delivering sanitation water for all is finance. This is why today we've brought together not just sector ministers, but also finance ministers. As things stand, too many governments still rely on traditional taxes, tariffs and transfers to subsidise the sector. And while our citizens are often willing to pay for access or improvements to these services, utilities struggle to cover the costs of basic operations or maintenance without additional financial support. This makes no sense economically, it makes no sense developmentally, and it certainly makes no sense politically. The losses associated with inadequate water and sanitation services currently total some $260 billion per year, or 1.5% of global GDP. That's a big hit on growth. On the flip side, we know every dollar invested in water and sanitation brings about a fourfold return in health, economic and educational outcomes, all of which can serve a government's broader economic and social agenda. COVID-19 might have made our work even more important, but in some ways it has also made it more difficult, including through the postponement of capital projects right across the sector. I also understand revenue collection rates from many water utilities across Latin America have already dropped by 28% on average. And the fact that Latin America will be one of the continents that is likely to be hardest hit economically by this crisis compounds the problem further. Without a course correction, the challenges facing this critical sector will therefore only escalate. including as climate change, rolling global health emergencies and other systemic risks continue to build. But this crisis represents a rare opportunity to see and do things differently. Therefore, my three big messages to you as ministers today are: 1. Your response to COVID-19 is an opportunity to invest in water, sanitation, hygiene in a way that will both control the spread of the virus and rebuild your economies. The statistics on this speak for themselves. In Peru, the Executing Nucleus program has seen 34,000 people employed as a result of around $300 million in investment over 6 years. In Argentina, the HACE program, initiated in 2004 to reinvigorate the economy, has created some 15,000 jobs in the wash sector simply around Buenos Aires alone. Doing so will also help your economies over the long term. This is my second message, including through maximising value from existing public funds. And the third, to do this, you should also use this as a moment to revitalise your approach, including through identifying areas for innovation and new opportunities for funding. This includes by looking at avenues such as the Green Climate Fund, social impact bonds, among other options. Since we last met, these and other innovative financing options have been compiled by SWA in a new practical handbook for governments. Titled Water and Sanitation, How to Make Public Investment Work, the handbook provides real-world examples to show political leaders how they can secure additional finance for water and sanitation in ways that are both politically and economically sensible. Investing in water and sanitation creates jobs, boosts businesses and reduces the long-term burden on government budgets. But more to the point, it radically improves people's lives, particularly those of women and girls. For those in political office, there are not many opportunities where a single investment can reduce premature deaths and illnesses, increase life expectancy, improve the quality of life, ensure privacy, safety and dignity for all, as well as boost our economies and get present, enhance and speed up the process of economic recovery. Investing in water and sanitation does all of these things and more. I thank you for your attention.
To introduce Angel Gurria. He's a Mexican economist, that he's the Secretary General of the OECD since 2006. And Mr. Gurria is going to speak to us, and he's going to give us a very brief outlook about the regional outlook of access to sanitation, water, and health. Mr. Gurria, it's a great honor to give you the floor. Thank you so much, Katerina. For me, it is a great pleasure to participate in this meeting about the importance of investing in water, sanitation, and health and hygiene. This is a topic that the Minister of Finance could have a very important role, but so many friends that I'm seeing here in this image and are supporting this such important task. There's been promising advances. However, we need more efforts. The Latin American region and the Caribbean have recorded important progress in access to water supply, sanitation and hygiene services, access to water services, and safe water and good quality drinking water is still under 80%. It's around 79%. It's maintained itself quite stable, and access to sanitation services, good quality sanitation services that are also safe, are still under 50%. This means that there's a lot to do. We have to double up our efforts. These access indices continue being very low, and they hide important variations amongst countries, but also among the same countries. Inside the same countries, only 14 countries in the region are can say that are on the right path, that are complying with the Sustainable Development Goals, whereas 12 are very slow, walking very slow, and other 5, the progress is frankly negative. Besides the lack of access to water supply services, sanitation and hygiene, it affects more women and girls than many times are the ones that assume the load of having to go and look for water, as suggested by the video that we watched at the very start, where it said, now I can send the girls to school because they don't have to go and fetch water. That is a core difference. And water and sanitation are more important than ever, today more than ever. And we are saying that with the pandemic, with COVID-19, it's even more important. And only 8% of the population, of the world population, and we're talking about Latin America, only 8% of the world population has 26% of the total of COVID cases and 38% of deaths associated to the virus. That means that is hitting us very, very strongly, and the most vulnerable that lack access to hygiene facilities and wash.
Afectados. Las consecuencias económicas y sociales de esta crisis también han intensificado la presión económica sobre los proveedores de servicios de agua y saneamiento. La presión sobre los presupuestos públicos ha agravado las dificultades para financiar las inversiones necesarias y la renta, es decir, el ingreso real per cápita se ha visto reducido, lo cual agrava aún más, agudiza aún más los problemas de acceso y de poder pagar el servicio. Por ello es fundamental reforzar el financiamiento del sector para evitar que la falta de liquidez genere a corto plazo un problema de solvencia a largo plazo que podría socavar la estabilidad financiera del sector y, por lo tanto, limitar la inversión que es tan necesaria. Debemos actuar para incrementar la inversión en agua, saneamiento e higiene. El adverso panorama no puede servir de excusa, no debe servir de excusa para aplazar o reducir nuestros esfuerzos para incrementar la inversión en agua, saneamiento e higiene. Es más, una demora en la adopción de medidas solo agravará el daño causado en las comunidades más vulnerables. Es por eso que debemos actuar rápidamente y en múltiples frentes. Permítanme destacar 3 recomendaciones clave. Primero, hay que fomentar un entorno propicio a la inversión para atraer fuentes de financiamiento hacia proyectos e inversiones relacionados con el agua. El marco de acción para la inversión de la OCDE puede serles útil en este campo. Segundo, debemos garantizar que los programas de gasto público, tanto a nivel nacional como local, reporten ventajas tangibles, ventajas rentables para la comunidad. Y tercero, necesitaremos movilizar nuevas fuentes de financiamiento, incluyendo las inversiones directas por parte de empresas privadas y las inversiones, las llamadas inversiones de impacto, de capital, entre comillas, paciente, los fondos de inversiones. La OCDE está lista para apoyar, para continuar apoyando sus esfuerzos con nuestros principios de gobernanza del agua, porque hay problemas de financiamiento y hay problemas también de manejo.
And there's also problems with governance and the control of water. So, my dear ministers, my dear friends, dear participants, access to water and to hygiene and sanitation services, as I said, is more important today than ever. Water is an essential resource in our daily life for our planet and for our health. Investments in water safety and sustainable growth should have a central role in the recovery, economic recovery packages post-COVID-19. The OECD is more than ready in order to support your efforts. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary General, for your intervention, for the support to the sector, but also to putting on top of the table the topic of governance, because we know that governance is not only lack of financing, but we also have to ensure that there's bases. We have to set our bases very well placed so we are able to obtain the necessary investment. So right now that all our opening speakers have spoken, I want to thank everybody. And now the scene is ready to go to the debates. We are very fortunate enough to have the presence of His Excellency Dr. Greenspan, the Ibero-American General Secretary, that is going to moderate this session. Dr. Rebecca Greenspan is going to talk to us about the national practices, about the countries that are going to present, and she's going to be our moderator, and we'll have Costa Rica, Guatemala, and Nicaragua as presenters. And once the chat is going to be centered in a different aspect that of the financing of water hygiene and sanitation. Rebecca, it's a great honor to give you the floor for the moderation. Thank you so much, Katerina. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you for your enthusiasm, your energy, and for such an important forum that you are heading. And thank you to all the speakers, because the field is ours. So everybody, welcome to this panel that is entitled How to Foster the Economic Recovery, the Case of Investment in Waters, Sanitation, and Hygiene. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you. And this round table is made up, as Katerina said, by the ministers or vice ministers of Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and Guatemala, 3 Central American countries that is my region. Therefore, it's a double honor for me to be here with you. And the practice of these 3 countries and the innovation in their practices is centered in different aspects of the water, sanitation, and hygiene. We heard how important financing is and the important gaps that we still have in this sector. I have a debt with the 20th century and that we have to overcome in the 21st century. Therefore, next, I'm going to introduce the practices of each of the countries, and then I'll invite the vice ministers to think about what are the importance of each of them. After that, after they speak, others will formulate their questions and give their observations if they wish to do so. The other ministers, if you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand with the right function that we have in this event with our hand, so that you can ask the question and also you can do it on the chat. And if time allows, we invite you to speak. And for those of you that are not ministers that are here with us, and if you have any questions that you would like to address to the presenters, I'd like you to write on the chat on the platform that is ready. So the questions are going to be selected in the second part that Caterina del Alburquerque is going to say. And I'm going to repeat, we only have 120 minutes for this meeting, and we wish to have a dialogue and Please, everybody, respect your time. Rebecca, sorry for interrupting you. I'd like to ask you to please choose Spanish under your screen so that we can translate into the other languages, because I'm in Spanish. Yes, I'm in Spanish. Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay. So right now, for the first session on national practices on investment in this sector that is crucial, as we said, for any human activity, and in particular in order to fight this pandemic, I'd like to make emphasis in the conclusion of the manual prepared by CWA for the Ministers of Finance, comply number 6 ODS, that not only needs us to increase 3 times the financial resources, but it needs a political commitment likewise to comply with the SDGs. And for that, I'll go to the case of Costa Rica right now, that has been an innovative country regarding environmental services and sustainability services. And in the year 2008, Costa Rica established what we so call the residual water discharge, and was established by the Minister of Environment, and under the principle that those that pollute pay. The amount to be paid is directly related with the flow and quality of what has been discharged and the compliance of the regulation. Therefore, these funds, where do they go? The funds are invested again in services, in administration, and in education. This financing model will reduce the gaps in access to sanitation in the country, in particular for operators and with less financial capacity for sanitation. Therefore, I'd like to give the floor to the Vice Minister, Sacastro Esquivel, Vice Minister of Costa Rica, and I'd like to ask him as follows. How have you answered, dear Vice Ministers, the industry and the public to this initiative of the discharge environmental fee that is the so what have you faced along the way so we can all learn from the Costa Rican experience? Vice Minister, we'd like to give you the floor. Thank you so much. Ms. Rebecca, my dear friend, such a pleasure to see you. And I'd like to greet all the authorities of the World Health Organization, of the UNICEF, and all the different bodies that are here represented, and our colleagues from the different vice ministries and ministries of the Treasury, Finance, or as everybody calls it. And now in Costa Rica, let me tell you that recently, I'm going to make reference, we just added a paragraph to Article 50 of the Political Constitution that says any person has the human basic right of having access to drinking water. And because of that, because of the principle that those that pollute pay, the establishment of this canon of what tries is to ensure a financing source that will allow public and private entities to carry out projects relating water sanitation. With the establishment of this canon, and all entities that agree physically, chemically, or biologically in this have reacted positively in order to know that they're changing the composition of the water that's transported, that is gathered, or that is unified and is turned into residues. So the reestablishment of these allows different entities, public and private entities, such as the public service that is in charge, one of the largest companies that is dedicated to sewage, and other private entities like the associations of drinking water that we call them asadas in Spanish, have the possibility to have access to the 60% of this canon to do different processes for water treatments and sewage. And not only that, but we've also been able to have projects of this nature, and we can put the research and development item, because 50% of this allows for the promotion of a cleaner production of water. And what's even more important is that part of what we charge for those that pollute pay could lead to cleaner production later on. So we have a very interesting component, an additional component, given the concept of those that pollute pay is based on two components, on the chemical demand of oxygen and the total suspended solids. So it's generated in the economy, the incentives in order to reduce the load of pollutants in rivers and affect to a lesser extent the impacts we have in our basins, where generally is where we do all of these water cleaning. So in general terms, this has been a way of treating and recovering the water quality that is preserved from according to the constitutional reserve. So we are now doing everything to have a better use of the water resources. Thank you. Thank you so much, my dear Vice Minister. And the truth is that the Costa Rican case is very, very interesting, and I feel that it has a lot of learnings. Let me tell you that besides the great leapfrog in health indicators that Costa Rica happened in the decade where we improved all water and sanitation. So this connection, it cannot be discussed. It's very important, and it cannot be discussed in our countries or the world. Now, we'd like to give the floor to Guatemala. Now, in Guatemala, the idea is how are we able to close the gaps with water and sanitation? This is a very important challenge for all countries in Latin America, and even more so with the economic impact that we have with COVID-19 that could deepen the gaps instead of closing them. Countries need the interventions to generate the opportunities of jobs in association with the world, with the entrepreneurial world and commercial world, with the productive world. We know that closing these gaps is of great importance in order to improve the productivity of our countries and in order to improve the revenues of families. Therefore, I'd like to give the floor to my dear Minister of Finance in Guatemala, Mr. Gonzalo Rich. Dear Minister, Guatemala has important growth economic opportunities. How do you integrate within your strategic actions for the economic reactivation and social reactivations, investments in water and sanitation, taking into account that a sustainable and long-term investment is giving us investments related to infrastructure? If not, we also have topics related to institutional capabilities, to the investments that we must do in the institutional capabilities and in governance. Therefore, my dear Minister, I'd like to give you the floor. Thank you so much, and we're very interested in listening to you. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I hope you can hear me well. Yes, we can. And let me tell you several important topics. One of them is that we are completely clear about the importance of water, sanitation, and hygiene. And many times it's very sad after spending so many storms and floods, if something we have in excess is many times is water. The problem is the water management management of the excess water. In a meeting that we had with Friends with Israel here in Guatemala, we had a vendor that is ready to, this is kind of a film, but there's a dry pad that rains more than what it rains in Israel. And what I would like to tell you is that, yes, we do have a lot of projects regarding water and sanitation. That is not enough. We have a loan of the International Development Bank, and yes, the amount of water we have, the investment is not enough. Countries like Guatemala, we don't get out of catastrophes. As Amanda and Cristobal at the beginning, then we had COVID, and now we have ETA and Iota and Kappa, that is a coming hurricane, that are making us face our resources and part of our debt in programs that are related to rebuilding. The indicators of Guatemala are very good in spite of going through COVID. Our debt and payday rate is 33%. Very clearly, our fight is the tax burden, so that total revenues versus debt would be in a index that is not critical, but is close to critical. We have very little taxes to face the debt, and the macroeconomy is quite healthy, I would tell you. However, the budget project that was approved yesterday at night was a long time. It was approved, and it includes enough funds in order to activate social and economically our country. We have an excellent relationship with the private sector. There is a good relationship with Congress. Those that are in the public Congress can value that. And we're also leaving aside, I would say, some of the budgetary resources, some DGLs, the monetary fund budget or loans that allow us to invest, I would tell you, in a quite more open manner in destinations that are not so committed, like other loans that come from multilateral organisms. Therefore, again, I would like to tell you that we don't want to fall in debt more, because the problem also is that we have a lot of supply to solve problems, and then they don't give us the money because we pay well. But at the end, this is a vicious cycle that we cannot get out of. So as a result, we're asking for lots of technical cooperation to see how are we able to have access to green funds, to donations, because there's countries like Guatemala, we say Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Salvador, and a little bit of Costa Rica. All of us are prone to climate change. Many of the topics that a lot of industrialized countries through that same growth also have, and they hurt us. And the consequences, and many of them, as this year, has been the excess rain, that we cannot manage water. Therefore, I would tell you that we're completely aware of the importance, in order to strengthen this type of assets, all the sewage, all the hygiene, COVID is a topic that we have to pay attention, and we have a lot of schools that don't have access to drinking water. And in ending, I would like to tell you the situation has been very complicated. There's a lot of factors. This is the first year of government. Thank God we did well for the first months. So we were able to face COVID properly. This new storm and coming storm and the cold front that was coming from the United States was pushed to the south and affected us very much. And we have a good budget for next year. And we also have the support and credibility of the multilateral banking. And so we have good communication with the private sector, so that next year we will have an excellent year in water and sanitation. If we don't have the hygiene, if we don't have treated water to reach the overall population, we're clear that we will not have the job generations that we want. Therefore, I would say that we are at your service. If you can support us regarding cooperation, regarding research, regarding people that could give us added value. The strategy we have here, I would say, is that we are good and we're very thankful for all of that. My dear Minister, thank you so much. Thank you for bringing the topic of the climate change and the topic of the relationship with the private sector, because they're essential. However, this topic that the budgetary resources and national resources as well as loans become into a very important element for the recovery, Mr. Minister, and therefore the support of the international system in order to carry out our tasks and we need is essential. Therefore, in order to have a better normal, not only a new normal, but to have a better normal, we have to invest. This is a sector that will help for us for the recovery. Mr. Minister, thank you so much and good luck with Lota. That is a tropical storm. I hope it's not a hurricane anymore and it's not going to hit you so badly. Let's go to the case of Nicaragua. In the last 12 years, Nicaragua threefolded its investment in drinking water and sanitation in the urban sector. And we also know there's additional funds that will be invested in the next 4 years between 2020 and 2024 in order to grant the right of drinking water and sanitation to more than 400,000 more families. Therefore, aside from the project of adaptation to climate change for water and sanitation of Nicaragua that incorporate the adaptation, as they said, by the Minister of Guatemala to the climate change in the management of resources and in rural areas in order to increase the resilience of the rural communities. Therefore, my dear Vice Minister Jose Adrián Chavarría, welcome. And please tell us, we know that Nicaragua has lots of water. I just said it. However, the distribution of high rain as the dry corridor that was mentioned by the previous minister. So how can we ensure financing, the necessary financing, so that everybody can have access to water and sanitation, as the agenda in 2030 says, without leaving anybody behind? So I would like to give you the floor, Vice Minister. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you so much for the authorities of the institutions and for the government authorities here present and all the ministers. The topic of water and sanitation, and I have access to drinking water, it is a topic related to equity and is related to poverty. So the poorer the societies, the more rural they are, less access to water and less possibility of having sanitation systems or proper sanitation systems. Therefore, Nicaragua has committed itself in these last 7 years to invest more than 1 point of the GDP. They're investing 1.2, 1.3 of the GDP, and it has had a core impact. And we have said that practically the 4,200, we could have a lot of people with new connections for the population and in sanitation. This is access to sanitation and drinking water. We have had a progress of 2,306,000 people. So it means 34%. In the urban sector, we have had a leapfrog. We have not solved the topic. However, we're going to require more resources. We are going to have to continue investing in 2024 of 1 more point in the GDP per year. And we will go and see the rural area where the poverty has been for the last 200 years and is still there. We have to be realistic. We have to solve this problem, being very open and frank. The rural sector never had water. And we acted very quickly in the urban sector. Many times we abandoned the rural sector. So our government said we have to turn and see the rural area and help the rural area. And that has to do with two aspects. The poverty associated to the climate change, that is the poor practices of the use of land, the poor practices of the use of water, and besides a topic that has a direct impact in public health and has an underlying cause that has this angle of poverty that has to do with a low level of education. If you have a society with low levels of education, that is going to have an impact in the poor productive practices and is going to have an impact in access to health. And the access to health is going to be highly related to access to water and sanitation. Therefore, for sure, we are very concerned because of COVID. The world is worried about the global pandemic, about COVID. However, in the last 10 years, 8 million people have died due to dysentery or cholera. We should be worried about that too. Basically, these are in the lowest and in the poorest extracts of the population in the rural areas and is not served. So we have to serve with the rural sector. We have to attend the poverty because it's not visible. However, we've been progressing in serving 8% of the population of the rural area with a coverage of 55% of the population, and in sanitation we've progressed in 386,000. That gives us a coverage of 51%. So we have had a huge growth, but the growth is halfway. We are halfway because what shall we do? What shall we do? There's three things that we have to rescue here. And Dr. Gurria has mentioned it very clearly. The topic number one is we have to create the right environment for different types of investments. This is a topic that goes beyond the sectors of public sector. We must incorporate the community, the territory. We go on the deconcentrated path. The community, financed and supported by the nation, should be looking for answers together with the municipal governments. The other topic is maintaining public investment focused on topics related to drinking water and sanitation. We believe that between 2020 and 2024, drinking water and sanitation should become the first public investment, given that we've solved 98% of electrification. There was a huge deficit in our country. We're going to reach 95% of electric power or electrification in our country and improving the highways and roads. We have to focus on education, public health, that we're building a better hospital infrastructure. And I'm sorry, Costa Rica, but in 2022, we're going to have the best hospital network in public sectors. All this effort is going to be focused towards water and sanitation. And why water and sanitation? Because it's directly connected to people's lives and also to the life of the community and the life of the country. And there, I'm also going to mention Costa Rica. If we don't have a country with access to global tourism, we should have an important investment in health and education, and we must have a healthy society regarding the environmental quality of the country. The third topic, I believe, is, and for sure you have it there, that we have to give the necessary incentives to transform water as an investment. Water and sanitation's topic is the social investment that is the most important about health and education. We have to invite the private sectors. I feel it's very important that the example given by Costa Rica is we have to take the principle that those that pollute pay to get out of pollution and excess use of water. However, I also believe that the international community, and I'm talking about the government, and we have to remember that all these countries have important gaps. Guatemala has an important gap too, so we have to double up financing, not as a royalty, but as a strategic investment for this country, so these countries can raise the bar and can become countries that are positive, and they can have investment, given the climate change, and very likely is the most severe damage and problems in the access of water and sanitation. As the Minister of Guatemala said, these last 3 years we've had more 3 last years, we've had more water in the dry corridor than in any time during the year. We're talking about 400 millimeters per year that if we, our peers that are in the sub-Sahara telling us that this is a universal rainfall. So what we have to do is create the necessary investment in order to capture all this rainwater, in order to retain this rainwater and redistribute it for production. And that has to do to an adaptation of the climate change. We cannot see the water and sanitation topic without looking into the mitigation and adaptation efforts on climate change. We are in the second most affected area due to climate change, because the other area is for Asia. However, we in Central America, basically, we are that also has an impact on water. So therefore, I believe that we should have a maximum effort in order to focus the non-official support as a strategic investment for these countries. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Thank you, Minister, and thank you for making emphasis that doing the right thing pays. When we invest in health, when we invest in water, is when our economy does better, because quality investments come to our countries, and being able to maintain the public investment in and focus in priority sectors. Minister, thank you so much for sharing with us and for reminding us that we are highly focused on COVID-19. But what is true is that today, more than ever, we know the depth of dysentery, poor hygiene, of not having access to sanitation and water continue existing, and are also a pandemic that has to be eliminated. Thank you, Minister, for sharing with us. And now we are going to go to the second part of the session, where we are opening up the floor to the other ministers that are with us, not without telling you, Mr. Minister, that I changed you the name. I said you were Vice Minister because the Vice Minister was the one introducing himself, but the one that participated with us is Ivana Costa, and he's a minister, not a Vice Minister. Now I'd like to give the floor to Magdi Martinez Soleiman, the director of the Spanish Agency of International Cooperation for Development, my dear Magdi from the OECD, that has also been a leader in international spaces in topics related to development. Magdi, we'd like to give you the floor. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to know first that Rebecca has been my boss. Everything she says about me has, of course, this connotation of friendship, well-deserved on my behalf, and of a lot of good vibes. So thank you so much. And we believe this debate is extraordinarily interesting, because not long ago I was sharing with the Minister Ricci from Guatemala precisely the discussion around public investments, the indebtment, first need services, and where to go with the OECD with regards to this matter. So you have to know that Spain has, in the topic of water, one of its priority pillars in its technical cooperation, in its grant cooperation, and also in its financial cooperation around water. As I was telling you, the topic related water for us is a topic that joins safety, through agriculture, and social inclusion, through the connection to unfavored sectors. It also connects just distributive and tax structures through tax structures that are more socially progressive. And they also represent a bet in favor of the life quality and in favor of the service provision, as I said, quality services. So the a conference of water directors connects the national water resources of the 22 countries in the Ibero-American space and the main international agents that are interested in the water matter. This is a working forum and exchange and sectorial cooperation regarding water that I thought it was important to point out. The Second World Organization for Health, also for the economists amongst you that like to talk about return with the productive investment, the dollar spent in returns has 4 and 5.5 returns. This, therefore, is a very good investment from the profitability standpoint. In some countries in Latin America, this profitability is very, very high. In this context is where Spain, and a decade ago, talked about the FECAS for the fund for water and sanitation that has 8 million euros. It's like $1 billion, a little bit more than $1 billion, that has developed programs in 18 countries in Latin America and the Caribbean and has affected positively 3.5 million of people. I'd like to indicate that it's not only, it's a mix, it's a blend between the grant and the loan that allows us to support our partner countries in this cooperation. The last comment I wanted to make this morning, we had a meeting that was very interesting with the person responsible, and we so-called companies from water because of the city or the metropolitan area where they develop their activities. So I had a meeting with the delegate, a water Council of Sevilla that provides water to 1.5 million people in the capital of Andalusia, and they manage thousands of employees and workers, and this is an engineering company. And he was telling me, and I was telling him about providing technical assistance to the government of Honduras that has helped us support in the middle of the response to these hurricanes in order to establish this service in some of the damaged infrastructures. And this engineer was telling me two things. Number one, in Spain, we have a lot of capability to provide technical assistance because we've made a lot of mistakes. So we know the mistakes that should not be done again at the time we establish when we fight against losses of water. When we want to connect some water to the general network and establish the proper governance structure of companies. And he also said that we will be available in order to continue supporting the countries in this matter. Ms. Secretary, thank you so much. Thank you, Magdi, for reminding us such important the funds of water and sanitation, where Spain has huge experience, and all the topic that you mentioned regarding governance that is of such importance because of everything you've expressed. Thank you for being with us. Now I'd like to give the floor to Juan Bofill from the European Investment Bank. He is the Senior Engineer in Water in the direction of projects, and he is responsible on SWA. The investment banks are very, very important in this matter. Juan Bofill would like to give you the floor. Thank you so much, Juan Bafil. I hope you can hear me well. Fortunately, I cannot connect my camera. I've had problems with my camera, and so I'm going to speak without putting my camera on. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me for inviting the European Investment Bank. Thank you to the and for inviting us, and thank you for the SWA and for all the different interventions of the different colleagues. The European Investment Bank has acquired recently, concretely last week, we acquired the commitments included in the climate bank map. There are two. The first of them is a commitment that dated on 2025, all financing activities have to have at least 50% of a climate change component and sustainability. The other one is all the financial activities have to be aligned with the principles of the Paris Accord. And by complying with these two goals, the water sector is core for us. Complying of the SDG 6 has to be complied, but not at all costs. The water and sanitation projects have to have resilience to climate change and have to have equal gender basis. The water sector could have a contribution that is decisive in the reduction of greenhouse effects emission by incorporating the purge of residual waters and criteria in the distribution of drinking water, and all of that under the context of the pandemic that we're suffering. As mentioned before, the current water is critical to solve this pandemic. The European Bank has one of the main goals, Latin America, and since 2015, we are providing loans for more than 11 billion euros. From this 11 billion, one is in the water sector, and all of that always working hand in hand with our friends in the sector, with our counterparts, as we say, that are the Inter-American Development Bank, CAF. We are working with them all the time in a joint manner. So the water sector has been and is basic in financing for us. So we are providing training in the Financing Common Summit so that the most national public banks and local banks join us to the Water Finance Coalition in order to increase the financing and cooperation in the water sector. With that, I am done. Thank you so much for the invitation and all the support to the water sector and to the financing of water of this such important sector. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Juan Bafil, to remind us that this is not only having access to water and sanitation, but having a sustainable access with gender equality, with resilience within the SDGs. So thank you for your participation. And now I'd like to give the floor, and it's an honor for me to give the floor to Michelle Patrice Boisberg, Minister of Economy and Finance of Haiti. Dear Minister, bonjour for you.
Good afternoon to all, or good morning. The government, Haiti's government, is pleased with the initiative and laud the initiative as well, given the context of the pandemic. We would like to present to you the progress of the water issue in Haiti. Obstacles are still immense. The data show that 60% is for drinking water, 30%, 20% for treatment of water. However, access of water in urban area is at 84.6% according to 2018 figures. The water treatment sector is transforming, the transformation has allowed a progress in the reform. we have created a national regulating body, the DINEPA. In 2009, we've put a real sector for water treatment. In 2012, in 2011, deconcentration of the services. In another event in 2010, to improve the regulation, it is important to reorganize the planification of budgets through a budget based on objectives. We launched in 2016 to 2017 a sector review of the regulation and protect resources and water treatment. We've organized protocols for reinforcing capacities. We elaborated a hydro organization for the whole system, for the provision of water. In financing for the sector, $30 million are taken in charge by 82%. Research represents 15%, and the treasury is at 2%. The help from other countries enabled us to learn lessons for improving our sector. We want to take the example of Nicaragua to enrich the financing of drinking water and water treatment. Costa Rica seems very interesting too. However, for water treatment in cities, the principle for the treatment of solid waste can only be envisaged through taxed and indirect taxation. With the help of the Inter-American Bank of Development, we intend to develop two pilot projects on the Cap Haitian and another town. We want to applaud the progress of the sector with the cooperation of Spanish, Swiss, the Inter-American Bank of Development, and thank the UNICEF for enabling Haiti to participate to the SWA platform. To guarantee the access to drinking water and to water treatment, the Haitian government has decided on a group of reforms to support financially with the DINEPA to cover for staff cost, help with supervision and regulation. With the leadership of the Prime Minister, there was an initiative launched as for consumption and for domestic consumption and industrial consumption. We need to do. The interpreter has difficulty with the sound that's lagging at times, and apologize. I thank you very much for your attention.
and we have a long-term vision of what is going on. So now we have a subsector, we have a strategy, we have a decentralization strategy with better regulation, with budget. So, Mr. Minister, we are delighted to hear you. And I know your country, I was with you in a long time with this topic, and I know that we have also connected the NEPA. Therefore, bravo for your intervention, and thank you so much with everything you have to do in the future. Now I'd like to give the floor to the Vice Minister of Finance from Honduras, to my dear Lilia Rivera. Dear Lilia, would like to give you the floor. Is Honduras connected? Lilian Rivera, Vice Minister. Good morning, everyone. Lilia Modales. Please go ahead, Lilia. Thank you so much. It's such a great pleasure to greet you. First of all, I apologize. The Minister of Finance, Marco Menendez, had another unforeseen meeting and he was not able to be with us, but I'm covering his role. So today, Honduras, like all the countries in Latin America, have to join to find joint solutions with the collective challenges that are related to water and climate. In the case of Honduras, the climate is affecting the availability of water sources we have in the denominated the dry corridor. We have permanent droughts, and in the south, we're affected by the droughts and floods. And also, we face serious adversities regarding access and treatment of water resources that don't benefit the population, as more than 800,000 people in Honduras lack of water and drinking water services, 80% in rural areas, and 1.4 million of people in Honduras do not have access to sanitation services. We have sustainable efforts in order to overcome these gaps, but the climate change is affecting us severely. Honduras has assigned the priority to promotions that support the Central American actions, and today as a nation, we've set forth a goal focused in looking after the environment by mitigating and adapting to the climate change. This is a core factor in the Sustainable Development Agenda subscribed by the country of Honduras in order to preserve the water sources to benefit the population. In my country, we're focusing every time more and more in the goal of Sustainable Development number 6, clean water and sanitation, and likewise in the ODS, actions in favor of the climate. So here, the water sector is basic because it's connected to health, life quality, and agricultural and economical development, among others that are necessary to achieve the well-being of the Honduran people. We, as a Ministry of Finance, are working and we are progressing in this sector related to water sanitation and hygiene. We're also supporting the drinking water and sanitation services as much as we can. We know firsthand of the importance of water for the development of a nation, and unfortunately we're affected every time more and more because of long droughts, plagues, deforestation, devastating fires, and that hurts us dearly, and we're not able to maintain and retain water. As a result of these phenomena in the last decade, floods intensified as well as hurricanes and storms, and they brought a lot of losses to our infrastructure, economy, and society as a whole. The impact of the Eta hurricane and Iota allows us to see these climate problems in our country and throughout Central America. By knowing this impact, our laws have assigned priority to infrastructure and sustainable agriculture, as well as programs in order to do a little bit of reforestation and achieve more water resources. This is translated into opportunities in a greener country and in more resilient country. We're going to improve the quality, the treatment of water in Honduras, and in a simultaneous manner, we strengthen the local capabilities in order to integrate the care of our rivers, basins, and to improve and help our environment. From Honduras, we have a path to establish the short, middle, and long-run efforts in order to have the right elements for the elaboration of a reactivation and reconstruction plan, where we have the support of CEPAL, the World Bank, the IDB, and the Economic Integration Development Bank. President Hernandez and the presidents from Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and Honduras have a strategic agenda as a Central American region that address things like the importance of investing in adaptation and mitigation of climate change, moving greater resources of green funds for the climate, and adapting social protection networks for climate change. Under this focus, the challenges of water and climate change go hand in hand from any optics that is analyzed, and therefore the geographic zone of Honduras and all the Central American countries give us great opportunities with ocean, long paths, and lots of water. But regarding climate change, it said lots of challenges, and with these, we know that the region is highly vulnerable. It looks good. These minimum conditions are affecting the states, and therefore, I invite you to work together so we can all overcome these problems in a joint manner as a Central America. I'd like to thank again for this space and reaffirm the commitment we have to add ourselves to the efforts of water, sanitation, and hygiene for all, locally and as the Minister of Finance in Honduras, internationally, and as human beings aware of the challenges that we face due to water, the fact that it will be the most important natural resource for the human race. Without water, there's no life. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Lilian. We know that Honduras is a very important partner, and I'm very pleased to have almost all the Central American countries participating in such an important forum. The time has come to give the floor to Vijay Rankarajan. He is the General Director for America and the Ocean of the Foreign Affairs, Commonwealth and Development of the UK. DJ.
Great, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here. I've just come back from 3.5 years in Brazil, and I'm currently responsible for the UK for health and COVID and climate change and science and innovation. So a very linked portfolio to what you're talking about. I think first, just to say thank you to the SWA and all the co-conveners for organizing this meeting, UNICEF, Inter-American Development Bank, World Bank. It's fantastic. And just my first and main message is on this crucial set of issues of water, sanitation, and hygiene. You have a strong international partner in the UK, and we will wish to support to the greatest extent that we can. I think this year's experience with the COVID-19 pandemic has just reminded us how absolutely crucial these issues are. They have been for human development for centuries. And we've just had a very brutal reminder, but with some good points as well. We're seeing the reduction of many diseases around the world because of the increased emphasis on hygiene and water and sanitation. We're also seeing that the possibility of improving is a very high priority for all of us. I mean, we think about 3 billion people worldwide lack the means to practice good hand hygiene. So for the UK, we're working with obviously Unilever, UNICEF, UNHCR, NGOs, governments, investors to improve hygiene in many countries, including around in the Americas. And on infrastructure, I think, as we build back better from this pandemic, as we try to create something which is not so vulnerable for a future pandemic, water, sanitation, and hygiene is absolutely fundamental. We have about 10 years to go for the Sustainable Development Goals, and I think collectively we should strengthen our efforts, particularly for the poorest households who are very vulnerable for climate change. And here I think the issues of resilience from health, from COVID, from climate change overlap very strongly in the whole of the water and sanitation sector. There is a real opportunity to improve. I'll be very brief. Just two final questions for ministers here. We think there are incredibly good examples around the world of why this matters. So do you, as ministers taking these decisions, have sufficient evidence and examples to target public funding to drive this performance, to attract and leverage new finance? And the second question, as all countries, and obviously the UK as host of COP26, we hope are going to table very ambitious NDCs and adaptation plans through the 12th of December Ambition Summit, through the 25th of January Climate Adaptation Summit, right the way up to COP26. Will your plans refer to the crucial role of resilience, of water, of sanitation and health? And is there anything we can do to help on that? Thank you very much to all of you.
I want to give the floor to Yalkiria Pineda from SWA Mujer. She's representing civil society organizations. Yalkiria, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for joining us today. Yalkiria is from SWA Mujer, SWA Mujer, CEA Women. Thank you, Yalkiria, for joining us. Well, good morning, distinguished Excellencies. My name is Yalkiria Pineda Rivera, Executive Director of SWA Mujer Nicaragua and spokesperson of the Civil Society of Latin America and member of the SWA platform. Further resources should be allocated into community services through national budgets, and they should be strengthened as sustainable development models. You should bear in mind that in Latin America, there are over 220,000 community councils providing water to millions of people in urban and peri-urban areas. They do volunteer work and they invest around $7 million annually. And this amount is tripled if we analyze what they do in terms of labor, workforce, food. This tangible contribution of rural communities to national accounts they still remain invisible. They contribute to our country's economies due to the civil society organizations working in capacity strengthening to improve water, sanitation, and hygiene. From the civil society, we believe that it is urgent to acknowledge and visibilize community management of water and its importance to reach the SDGs. We need to invest more through national budgets in community system infrastructure and strengthening capacities to improve SWA services and to create strategies on behalf of climate change. And we believe that it is also necessary to devote certain items so we can rehabilitate the destroyed infrastructure recently appalled by the hurricanes. And we should also analyze that budget allocation and investment budget allocation should be granted for fresh water, sanitation, and hygiene. Dear secretaries, what are the policies and strategies to be implemented from the finance ministers to close the inequality gap and guarantee that investment in SWA are there to address the needs of the most vulnerable populations, because we're vulnerable to climate change and to natural disasters? Thank you, Yalkiria, for underscoring community management, the importance of community management to improve governance. Yes, the statistics available do not account for community efforts, which are the main efforts. So thank you very much for your intervention. Now, Sasha Kramer from Soil Haiti, who's here on behalf and representing the private sector. Dear Sasha, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Greetings, honorable ministers and excellencies, all protocols observed. My name is Dr. Sasha Kramer, and I'm the Executive Director of Soil, a social enterprise in Haiti providing safely managed urban sanitation. Today I'm here representing the SWA private sector constituency. The private sector is with you on the front lines of battling the global public health crisis. I'm here today to suggest that if we want to achieve our shared goal of essential service provision, a basic human right for all citizens, we need to radically rethink the way that the private sector and governments collaborate. We need a new way of working together that frees countries from dependency and supports local value chains and entrepreneurship. Honorable ministers, the private sector is poised to be a key partner in the fight against preventable disease. But we cannot achieve equitable access for all citizens without partnership. The private sector has enormous untapped potential to support your efforts through innovation, including nature-based solutions that can reduce costs and mitigate climate change, and off-grid services that can rapidly reach where piped networks do not. Efficiency, which can be achieved through a commitment to cost-effectiveness and combined with the use of bold digital technologies and new sources of capital, from climate financing to private equity. To unlock the potential of the private sector, we need to work with you in 3 key areas: regulation, public education campaigns, and proper incentivization through tariffs, taxes, and results-based financing. Every citizen deserves the security and dignity of clean water and sanitation, and I believe that together we can make this a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sasha. So important, no? The local value chains, the partnerships, MDG, the Sustainable Development Goal number 17, that is so important. We can't achieve anything without partnerships and association. And regulation, education, and incentives for stable rules of the game. No doubt. Thank you so much. So important, the participation of the private sector. So let me now go, ahora.
I apologize. I'll switch to Spanish now. And I would like to give the floor to Courtney Green, who is SWA Director. And I would like to invite Courtney to take the floor in representation of research and learning institutions, which are so important because we still need to have access to further information.
Thanks a lot. And I'm Torgny Holmgren of SIVI, the Stockholm International Water Institute, representing the 31 members of the SWA Research and Learning constituency that provide and strengthen the knowledge and evidence base for water and sanitation sector. And our constituency is already supporting this sector by working alongside actors to implement and learn from innovative approaches and solutions. We do build evidence to justify increased investments in water and sanitation and help build wider public and institutional support. We also do undertake and understand the impacts of different investments, policies, plans that can inform policy making. And we do develop capacities with local, regional, and global partners. Many examples across the region show those aspects. However, there is much more that can be done. And we particularly call on your governments to enable a close involvement of research and learning institutions in the sector and policy dialogues in order to provide quick access to relevant evidence. This can be of great importance as we see with the COVID response these days. Science is really telling us how to move forward. An example is how researchers are able to track and anticipate COVID-19 outbreaks by analyzing wastewater, as is happening in Brazil and other countries in the region. And our institutions can also provide insights in many other aspects, such as understanding how balance the needs of vulnerable people with the financial sustainability of water utilities, but also how to improve efficiency and resilience in the water sector. Hence, we ask governments to raise funding for water sanitation research, as well as foster regional cooperation in these matters. But above all, we are here to hear about your needs. Please tell us, what are your evidence needs? What would you want to know? And how could we exchange around those aspects together? Our institutions are committed to solve the knowledge gaps needed for taking the relevant policy decisions. We are here to provide evidence-based support to your decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Torgny. So important. Thank you so much. Let me go back now to the ministers. Permítanme.
Allow me to go back to the ministers because we've received all sorts of questions over the chat. We will not have time enough to address all of the questions, but at least I would like to make the most of your comments. Comment number 1, the role that NGOs may play and civil society organizations in sorting out the issues and the challenges we face in this field, and how efforts of civil society can be supported. This is a major topic, and several questions have delved into those details. And finally, we would like to talk about the balance set out by the Minister of Guatemala about debt sustainability and indebtedness that we will need to make the investments required. Now, the question we received through the chat revolves around how we reinforce accountability, knowing that there is still a governance issue. And it's not only a matter of governance, but a lack of trust in the authorities. So how can we improve accountability so funds are used properly? And citizens, as well as institutions, may create that trust pact to foster reinvestment in this field. So I would like to get back to the ministers in the same order. You don't have to answer the same. We don't have much time, so each one of you has 1 minute, please. Please share your thoughts with us. Vice Minister of Costa Rica, Your Excellency Isaac Castro. Your comment, please. Thank you. I would like to give you a very specific answer. In Costa Rica, part of the management goes through MINAI, which is in charge of managing the whole issue. And they're doing so through their electronic platforms. They extend open invitations about open calls, and they're disclosing the possibility of drainage, water treatment, and sanitation projects. That as part of that canon, a certain percentage is specifically allocated to create the necessary resources to manage all assets and also to reinforce environmental education, both within the general population and the users impacted through the project. So the whole regulation establishes the mechanisms to allocate resources for projects, and citizens have access to that information. And there's also an environmental education access we're also working on in Costa Rica. Thank you very much, Isaac. You were on point, excellent, and it's a great practice. So as you see, it's not only a matter of willingness, but it's also a matter of design. Therefore, it's really important to learn from these experiences. I give the floor to the Minister of Nicaragua, Ivan Acosta. Ivan, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. Governance and transparency are in need. They add value to public service. For the Ministry of Treasury, it's all about public disclosure of information, full transparency, full disclosure, as well as accountability, which is a key aspect and can be observed in two ways. A practice for the last 8 years is that the resources granted by investment banks, by the World Bank and the IDB, should be externally audited from the financial perspective and audited as well. And the community should also find a way to grow and articulate through the FISA information system, which is the institution regulating the rural investment. So we have feedback. But you have to remember that service quality and continuity is also required, and we do have a chance to inside, when you live in the capital is different as if you live in a rural, remote community. So we have to strengthen that path of public investment. Now, from the tariff standpoint, Nicaragua has a big debt, and if private investors may tell us here that we shouldn't follow Costa Rica as a practice, but our tariffs are pretty low, and we only have one Treasury Department, and it's like a one-stop shop. So the whole Maresma system goes to the Treasury Department, and that's where public investment is distributed and allocated for public investment. So we need to work together, and I must say that multilateral contributions will not be enough. We do require further agents so we can really work on public investment and social entrepreneurship. So the need is to incorporate best practices of other countries, and that needs to be strengthened as well. Thank you, Minister, because audits must not only be accounting audits, but quality audits as well. And you're very brave in talking about the one-stop shop, that people know that investments will get there according to the tariffs they pay. So it has to do with public investment and with payment. Thank you very much. I don't know if anybody else wishes to make a final comment before we go back to Jennifer Sarah. Is there anybody who thinks we missed out on something? Do you want to comment? There's nothing on the screen. This is Katarina. Rebecca, no, there's no further comments. Okay, so I'm ready to put an end to this fantastic discussion. Thank you for your time, for your interventions. I hope it was very productive, as it was for me. And Catarina, a very important lesson. You do not wait. You don't expect to be rich to invest in water, sanitation, and hygiene. You do it basically to disrupt the vicious cycle of poverty. So you have to invest as to prevent, so you can move towards a more dynamic human development. And we've learned that from all the ministers here, from developing countries who have made a great effort in the fundamental sector for progress and to reach the SDGs. Thank you very much, everybody. Dear Jennifer, Sarah from the World Bank, the floor is yours for your final observations. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Rebecca. And once again, congratulations for such a wonderful moderation in today's discussions. On behalf of the World Bank Group, I want to thank the honorable ministers and vice ministers from Costa Rica, Guatemala, Haiti, Honduras, and Nicaragua for their valuable contributions. This meeting of ministers of finance is taking place at a very difficult time because the World Bank Group is now making double efforts, triple efforts to assist countries so that finally universal access to water, sanitation, and hygiene services are reached. But this objective will only be accomplished with strong leadership and investment, whether it's public or private investment. The COVID-19 sanitary pandemic has visibilized even more the gap in having access to basic services and has also surfaced the fragility of existing services, and as well as vulnerabilities of service providers to public health and financial crises. Due to the fact that Latin America and the Caribbean are at the eye, not only at the eye of hurricanes, unfortunately, but also at the core of the COVID-19 storm, we need to underscore that we must make all efforts possible to guarantee access to water, sanitation with safe management, and we should facilitate best practices as an integrated response to face the crisis during the emergency and also during economic recovery. Although the sectorial ministers are already aware of the importance, the ministers of finance through the region should add maximum political and financial priority so the divide gap is lessened. So $4 are invested as per $4 invested, although Fedros mentioned $5 this morning, but millions of jobs can also be created. Sasha already mentioned that. Providing basic services does not only create work, but it's for public servants, administrators, service providers, and managers, but Water is the key solution for all activities, including agriculture and small and middle-sized enterprises, as well as large industries. Investing in water and sanitation creates jobs at the long term and widens opportunities all across the board. And as we heard today, in spite of all the different challenges, the countries are making progress. Access is being improved as well as quality all over the continent. There are several opportunities, so our sector becomes more solvent and better focused on achieving results, strengthening systems and institutions, and leveraging more market funds and investment. These are great news. And by presenting this economic case, we should also advance in providing solutions at country level, and it should also try to share positive experiences between the countries. And to end with this session, as you all know, the World Bank and many of the partners in this meeting work together in creating a playbook for finance ministers to better invest in WASH. This playbook is a supplement to other efforts performed in recent months related to WASH sector financing, including another model recently created by the World Bank on how to measure the financial impact of COVID-19 on water companies and general design to create public service and liquidity lines at the national level. In summary, the time to act is now through national programs, through bold national programs, and there are 4 conditions to guarantee success. First, political leadership at the highest level. Number 2, public and private financing to reach specific goals and objectives, and with specific terms. Third, public-private partnerships and also partnerships with the civil society. And number 4, guarantee active engagement of communities to create behavior change at the long term. Together, we must prove that we can also take a huge step to reinvigorate this sector and to recover from the pandemic. Thank you very, very much. I don't know, I have to give the floor back to Catarina, to Rebecca. I'll give the floor back to Catarina. Thank you very much, Jennifer. Thank you for your remarks. Yes, the time to act is now. We need bold plans. And with that reflection, I give the floor to Catarina de Albuquerque, not without thanking her for giving us all this great opportunity. Thank you, Catarina, and thank you for everything you do at the SWA. Hey, Rebecca, I asked for the microphone to have the opportunity to publicly thank you for the great job you did, for the great energy and how you led this meeting. Thank you very much. I was telling my team, I have to travel to Madrid to meet her. Thank you very, very much. Before we move on to the last intervention of our friend, Yamilet Astorga, chairperson of the Costa Rican Institute, I asked our partners to create short 20-second videos. They're telling us that everything's okay, that the translation is okay, and let's play the videos.
Financiamos programas de agua y saneamiento para mejorar la vida de nuestros ciudadanos con más acceso y mejores servicios de agua y saneamiento. Nuestra región atraviesa un momento crucial. Es importante que nuestros ciudadanos puedan observar prácticas de higiene y tengan acceso a servicios de buena calidad. Este es el momento de redoblar esfuerzos para cumplir con el objetivo de desarrollo número 6.
As part of our commitment with the region, at CAF, the Development Bank of Latin America, we're implementing a 4-year strategy that by 2022, among other outcomes, will have contributed to providing safe drinking water to more than 11 million people and sanitation for an additional 4 million people. It is time for action.
And ensuring access to safe water, sanitation and hygiene will be crucial to propel the worldwide socioeconomic recovery. The visionary leadership of ministers of finance in this area is now needed to help countries build forward better from the pandemic, to realize societies that are more equitable, more resilient, and more sustainable, and to get the global goals firmly back on track. On the ground, in 170 countries, UNDP, the United Nations Development Programme, will continue to work closely with our partners to pool vital resources and know-how to finally end the exclusion of the poorest and most vulnerable from the most basic services.
En América Latina son más de 220,000 comités comunitarios.
Junto a las organizaciones de la sociedad civil contribuimos tanto a la organización, construcción y operación de los sistemas, así como el fortalecimiento de las capacidades y articulación de procesos participativos. La contribución económica, tan solo en los comités comunitarios, en tiempo, materiales y trabajo solidario y voluntario, para llevar agua a sus familias es de $5 por cada dólar invertido en zonas rurales. La brecha aún es grande. Es crucial financiar más infraestructura, así como fortalecer y profesionalizar a los comités comunitarios, sin romper los tejidos solidarios que caracterizan el manejo comunitario del agua que realizamos las comunidades en América Latina.
The UN Water Family applauds your work and looks forward to joining forces through the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework. Thank you and good luck with your deliberation.
Los socios del sector privado de Sanitation Water for All trabajamos en alianza con gobierno, la sociedad civil, la investigación y el desarrollo, alianza sobre objetivos compartidos y reglas claras. Somos empresas locales y multinacionales, grandes y pequeñas, de todo el mundo. Pero lo más importante es que creemos en la acción y venimos a ustedes con respuestas, con soluciones probadas. Estamos aquí para colaborar y fortalecer las capacidades y habilidades del sector privado de sus países. Esperamos trabajar con ustedes. Gracias.
Una alegría que la tecnología haya.
A great joy that technology has worked and we're not having any problems. Thank you so much. So with a great pleasure, I'd like to give the floor to our great friend, a dear friend of the SWA, Doña Yamilia Pastones Esqueleta. She's the executive chairwoman of the Costa Rican sewage service, and she's board of directors of SWA. Yamilet, I'd like to give you the floor for the closing remarks. Thank you so much, Katarina. And I would like to thank in particular to Doña Rebecca Greenspan, our compatriot and General Secretary of Ibero-American, for her fabulous moderation. Thank you to the executive head of UNICEF, Rita Ford, to Dr. Tedros from the World Health Organization, and to all co-organizers of this meeting. Thank you to the ministers of finance, to the ministers of water, sanitation, and hygiene that have helped us. And at this point, we have 17 authorities and representatives throughout Latin America, and of course, all those that have joined us from the world as a whole in this important activity. I also want to thank Catarina del Buquerque and her team of the Ministry of Sanitation and Water for All. And thank you to the organizers of this platform of Spark Read and Street and the interpreters. And I also would like to address in a nutshell, to tell you that investing in water and sanitation is investing in infrastructure, because many times we have in our own governments, we believe that if we invest in infrastructure, we invest in paths and roads, but not in sanitation. Investing in sanitation and hygiene without investing in preventive health. And I always say that, let's remember that health is not the disease. When we go to a hospital, when we go to a health center, it's because I'm sick, but that if we have drinking water, obviously we're investing in preventing diseases. And the other thing that is of core importance and is reminded us is the return of this investment that is about fourfold. Having supply water services and sanitation and residual waters allows us to have health in the population and promote development, tourism, industry, amongst others. I draw the attention of the importance in the security of the service 24 hours a day. Many times we talk about coverage and supply, but many times water reaches some of the population a few hours a day, and that doesn't ensure us health. Therefore, it's important to ensure health 24 hours a day, and preferably to look for a way of how do we provide drinking water. And of course, the investment at a rural level, and I congratulate Nicaragua because we've paid a lot of attention to the services at the rural community level. It is of core importance to have and supply water through the community to rural organizations. Is very important in all of our countries in Latin America. And another aspect that was not mentioned, but is also core, is having regulating authorities. The regulators not only are going to regulate the quality of the service, but they will also ensure that the cost and the price that we pay for the service is fair, is at cost. Obviously, this allows us to have the service sustainability. And I'd like to remind you that tomorrow, November 19th, is the day of the WC. That's one of the important challenges we have in Latin America. How do we ensure to have zero defecation in the air, like outside and outdoors? And the Vice Minister of Bolivia is with us. I want to thank you because in 2022, we are on the 6th conference of Latin America and in residual waters, drinking water, and sanitation. We've made up a team where we're all in Latin America sure that we're supporting and contributing so that this meeting is successful as well as it was in 2019 here in Costa Rica. And with nothing further, Catarina, I conclude with my thank you and and of course the Suriname director that is with us. I didn't say it before, but I believe that she's here also present, and I would like to especially greet you, hugs, and again thank you to all participants. Thank you so much to you, Yanileb. We finished now, but I would like to finish, and we hope that the video will work. We have a very special video from the Minister of the Sector in Indonesia that is inviting us, each of all, to participate in the next minister session of the ministers that is going to be next year in Bali, in Indonesia. So please allow the video to run.
Yeah. Of Sanitation and Water for All Global Leadership Council, Ms. Katarina de Albuquerque, SWA Chief Executive Officer, His and Her Excellency Minister of Finance, Ministers of Water and Sanitation, country representative in this finance ministers meeting, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Indonesia. In this very important forum, I would like to restate Government of Indonesia's strong commitment towards achieving universal access for water and sanitation. Water, sanitation, and hygiene sector is one of the top priorities in the country's medium-term development plan, which is aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals 2030. It is important not just to ensure achievement of Sustainable Development Goals 6 targets, but also to drive progress across other SDGs goals related to health, education, nutrition, and economic sectors. With spirit and commitment to achieve SDGs goal, hereby I am delighted to announce that the Government of Indonesia will host the next sector minister meeting of SWA during the last quarter of 2021 will be an opportunity for ministers responsible for water, sanitation, and hygiene to share and learn from others' country experiences and to renew and to strengthen our commitment towards provision of water and sanitation for all.